Hey everyone, welcome back to our second video today. My name is Lucas. I have Eric here as always.
Hey guys.
And today we'll be making our 2020 Georgia Senate runoff predictions did I say 2020? Wow, it's 2021 Georgia Senate runoff predictions. So this is our first Georgia runoff prediction. We haven't made one ever so far. We wanted to wait a little bit until the end of the year so we could really get our minds to see which candidate has the best chance. And I think, spoiler alert, it's going to be super close. And this is our second video today. We'll be probably coming out with the third video today as well. Enjoy all three. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's start off here by discussing the background of the two candidates. We have David Perdue, who narrowly was not able to avoid the runoff. He got 49.7% of the vote. In Georgia, you have to get over 50% of the vote in order to avoid a runoff and outright become the senator. David Perdue fell below that. So as a result, he will be facing Jon Ossoff in the runoff election. The other candidate we have is Kelly Loeffler from Georgia. I don't know why I said that, but she is the incumbent senator along with David Perdue. She got, I don't remember, it was around 25% of the vote, I believe, but there was a second Republican candidate there, Doug Collins. She was not able to get over 50%, neither was Raphael Warnock, and as a result, she will also be heading into the runoff election. So, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue have been getting into a lot of trouble regarding insider trading. So, as you can see here, there was some insider trading scandal involving both Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. And that is kind of an issue here because they are up for election this year. And I think this definitely did damage their campaign. And it especially damaged Kelly Loeffler because if you recall, she only got here, she was appointed by Governor Kemp after Senator Isaacson, sorry, am I pronouncing that correctly? Isaacson resigned because of his health. And as a result, he was replaced by Kelly Loeffler, and people were kind of angry because they thought she wasn't elected. She was simply appointed to this job. So let's first discussing the polls. Now, I know there's a lot of skepticism about Georgia polls, but taking a look at the 2020 election polls in the state of Georgia, they were not too bad. It had Biden up by 1.2. He ended up winning by 0.2. It was about a percentage off, but some of these polls really weren't all that bad. So I think we can trust the polls a little bit. We got to be really skeptical about the undecided voters because I think that a lot of the undecided voters will be breaking for the Republican candidate. We saw that in the 2020 presidential election, a lot of these undecided voters broke for Donald Trump, and he ended up either one, coming a lot closer than we expected to winning states, or two, he outright won them. Like Florida, he did very well with the undecided number here. So let's discuss the polling data we have so far. Before I dig into that, I think we should probably talk about the backgrounds of Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. I'll start off by talking about Jon Ossoff. He ran for Congress, I think it was in 2018 or 2017. I think there was a special election there. And what ended up happening was it was a very, very expensive race. It did result in Jon Ossoff losing. However, he is relatively well known now. Eric, why don't you just start by discussing Raphael Warnock?
Yep. So Raphael Warnock is a reverend, and he is pretty associated with the church. He is a proud Christian, and in a state like Georgia where there are quite a few Christians, it's important that he resonates with them in that aspect. There was actually talking about that race with Warnock and Loeffler. There was a debate that happened. I think it was in December. Yes, I believe it was in somewhere November, December-ish. And I really don't think it helped Loeffler that much. It didn't help Warnock that much. It kind of showed that he was a pretty good speaker, especially compared to Kelly Loeffler. But it really did not help Kelly Loeffler, which is more important for her because she has to defend her seat. Raphael Warnock is, challenging her, but Loeffler is, has to fend off Raphael Warnock from taking her seat, which she wasn't really elected to.
Yeah, I agree with what you said here. I think that a lot of people saw the debate as Kelly Loeffler being very monotone, repeating the same thing, radical liberal, Raphael Warnock repeating that over and over again. And I think we should also discuss the Ossoff Perdue debate, the one that happened before the general election. I think everyone agreed that Ossoff did a very good job against David Perdue. However, I think Perdue kind of saw that and he chose to decline to debate Ossoff again, with some people on the internet giving him the nickname Chicken Perdue. So now that we discussed the polls, let's discuss the polls here. Perdue currently is up by 0.4. Now, again, you got to be cautious because the undecided voters will undoubtedly break for the Republican candidates. And I think that this will be very, very close as the polls can show here. So previously, we did see Ossoff up a little bit. We saw Perdue up a little bit. It was kind of back and forth. And I think that this will be very interesting to watch for that reason, because we're going to be seeing a lot of back and forth in the polls. We still got to wait for new polls to come out regarding this election. Eric, why don't you discuss the Warnock and Loeffler polls?
Yep. So as we see, Raphael Warnock is surprisingly up by 0.5. And I remember in previous months, like months and months ago, we see this figure, Raphael Warnock, and he was gaining a lot of ground very quickly. He's also an African-American candidate, and Georgia's a pretty African-American state with a pretty high African-American population. And we will talk about the turnout in African-American voters quite soon, because it really does seem making an effect on this election, early turnout to be specific. So right now, 0.5 lead in the polls doesn't seem that much. We'll see how turnout changes that and or adds to that number.
Right. And again, I do want to remind our audience, please be cautious with these polls. There is an undecided number here, and it's likely that a lot of them will be breaking for Kelly Loeffler. I think it is definitely possible that Warnock and Ossoff both win their races. We'll be discussing our predictions a little bit later in this video. But this is where our polls stand today. And I do want to continue with what Eric was talking about, how, in the beginning, in the very, very beginning, like when we started this channel, Warnock was like a distant third from Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler. At that point, we thought that Doug Collins would outright win, or not outright, but he would advance to the runoff with Kelly Loeffler and end up winning the seat, which clearly did not happen. And I think that is very interesting for us to see here, that Warnock has completely gained up now, and it's making for a very, very close race. All right. Let's head now into something interesting I do want to point out here, a little side note here. From Trafalgar Group, we mentioned this group a lot. Very, very, very right biased. And, they did say, oh, we know how to pull the Rust Belt. They got the Rust Belt completely wrong this election for the 2020 presidential election. So looking at their runoff polls that just came out, someone actually just sent this to me a few minutes ago. They have Raphael Warnock leading Kelly Loeffler by 1 point, and they have Jon Ossoff leading David Perdue by 2 points. And I do want to say that Trafalgar Group has been a little bit strange from them for the runoff election. They've consistently been showing Jon Ossoff doing better than Raphael Warnock, and this is really strange because every other pollster shows Raphael Warnock doing better than Jon Ossoff, and this is again adding to the pattern here. And it's really, really shocking to see both of them up in these polls. Very, very interesting to see this. And another thing I want to point out here is there is a pretty low undecided numbers in these polls. 50 to 49, that's a 1 point undecided. 50 to 48, that's also a 2 point undecided. So this is definitely something interesting from Trafalgar. I do want to keep looking at the polls that we get out of the state. And now I think it's very, very important that we discuss the early turnout. Before we saw these early turnout numbers, we were thinking that both these races were like lean tilt D. Now, after we saw these early turnout numbers, now things get a little bit interesting here. So far, if I believe this is the right page, yep, the early voting statistics of the 2021 Senate runoff, the black turnout is incredibly high, 32%. That's quite astonishing. I believe that compared to the general election, this is actually less. No, sorry, this is more than the general election. I sadly don't have that number to pull up, but this is more than the black turnout from the general election. And that's kind of surprising because usually you have lower black turnout in the runoff elections. And black voters do tend to vote for the Democratic candidate. And with this being such a major race, I think that a lot of them did choose to go out and vote for the Democratic candidates this time. So I think that this will greatly be benefiting both John Ossoff and Senator Raphael Warnock, given this early turnout right now. Eric, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I have two things to add to that, and it was actually, two different examples that kind of support the significance and the significance of early voting. Look at Miami, right, in Florida. For the presidential election, turnout was really low in Miami and that was a sign to us that Joe Biden was not doing well in Florida. These early voting numbers showed us that this was not a good track for Joe Biden to win Florida, and he didn't. But in Georgia, the early turnout numbers were through the roof. And what ended up happening in a close margin, but still happened, Joe Biden won Georgia. And the fact that, African American sector of Georgia is a pretty important part in elections. The fact that the turnout there is really high is a very good sign for the Democrats and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, specifically as an African American himself, that they have a pretty good chance of winning this race. This is also why we wanted to wait a little longer to make this video, because these statistics are really important, and now we can use them, to show what might happen in this election.
Absolutely, 100% there. And specifically with the early turnout from Georgia in the regular election, black turnout was through the roof. It was super duper high. We were considering moving the race to Tilt D. We probably should have, but we ended up keeping it as Tilt R. That was the only state we got off on our prediction, sadly. But this is really interesting to see right now. So now we want to discuss the significance of this. So obviously, you probably do know the significance if you're watching this right now. If John Ossoff and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock can win, this will give them a 50-50 majority, with Kamala Harris breaking the tie. However, this will have some issues with policy. Even if Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff both win, they're going to have a lot of trouble passing policy. And that's because of a couple senators, very, very moderate senators. We mention them quite frequently. You have Joe Manchin from West Virginia. He's a very, very moderate candidate. If I remember this correctly, the website GovTrack actually has him to the right of Republican Senator Susan Collins. And you also have Angus King, the independent, pretty moderate. Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, pretty moderate. So even though the Democrats might be able to take control of the chamber, what might that result in? And quite frankly, they're going to have an easier time getting stuff done, but they can't push through, ending the filibuster, for example. That's something that Joe Manchin has continuously come out against, voting for ending the filibuster. And I know we mentioned this in a previous video, but I think some of this has to do with how poorly the Democrats did in some of these states. To be quite frank, Maine's Senate race should have absolutely been a pickup for the Democrats. Instead, Susan Collins won by a significant margin. And I think that was really surprising to a lot of Democrats and a lot of Americans in general, because a lot of people were expecting a Susan Collins loss. Eric, is there anything else you want to say to this?
No, not really, other than the fact that this is the reason why this race is so important and it's being looked at so much for a state Senate race, right? A Georgia Senate race, this does break, this makes or breaks who has the majority. And therefore, this changes how much of a hard time President Joe Biden, or will be President Joe Biden, will have, passing the policies that he wants. If there's a Republican Senate, it will be a lot harder for him. And if these two Senate race goes to John Ossoff and Warnock, it will be a lot easier for him, not the easiest, but a lot easier for him to pass policy that he wants.
100%. And I do want to add to that, with control of the Senate, Democrats have a trifecta in the federal government. They have the House of Representatives. They will have the Senate if they can win these 2 races, and they will have the White House. So a trifecta is huge. And this is the first time if Democrats can't pick up Georgia and the 2 Georgia races, this is the first time, I believe, that a Democratic president in a while will be heading into office without control of the Senate. In 2008, for example, Democrats had a very, very large control of the Senate. I think they almost had around almost 60 seats, I think. But this time, we got to wait and see what happens. We'll make another prediction soon. But our current prediction is this. We think that the special race, we actually have this one as Tilt D right now. And if, again, this is a very, very close race. We have it as Tilt D or toss-up. So it's like in between the two, because we're not completely set in stone that it's a tilt. It's going to go to Raphael Warnock yet, but we do think there is a slight edge for him. Now, the Georgia Georgia regular election, I personally have this one as a toss-up. Eric, what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's, everyone is having a hard time really predicting this race. It's, Georgia voted blue for a presidential race. It's, known to be a fairly conservative state, but the polls are showing that it's pretty close. And in general, people know that it's going to be very close. John Ossoff is trying to appeal to the younger generation. There are some people, for example, that turned 18 after the presidential election, which is the age required to vote, that could be able to vote for the runoffs because they're already 18. That might make a difference. John Ossoff is trying to appeal to that generation. I've seen him on social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. He's really trying to appeal to as many different types of people as possible to really exhaust the vote and therefore win in a very tough race.
Exactly. So we do need to wait and see what will happen. We'll continue to make predictions to see who will win this race. And with that being said, that is the end of it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode very, very soon.
See ya.